Hello once more everyone, Aquaman here and welcome to today's video. Before we begin, a huge thank you for the support on my previous one, it really means a lot to me. Today though, we're gonna be analyzing a villain instead of a hero, that being Steppenwolf from the Snyder Cut. Yeah, much like everything else in the film, the main antagonist of JusticeLeague got a major improvement in the director's cut compared to his studio-driven version. Better design, better motivations, better characterization, and overall, just a way better villain. In this video I plan to delve into why that is, so like, comment and subscribe for more content in the future, and without further ado, let's begin! Steppenwolf is a military commander from a planet Apokolips, whom arrives on Earth after being made aware of the death of his most powerful protector, Superman. He wants to unite the three mother boxes, technological objects that almost resemble magic, in order to scorch the planet and return the good graces of his master and nephew, Darkseid, whom exiled him for past treachery. Everything Steppenwolf does in the film is to redeem himself in the eyes of his master, wanting to atone for a past mistake and without letting anything or anyone stand in his way. He brings with him a weapon called the Electro-X and a small army of parademons, flying zombified cyberbugs that aid in his conquest. By the start of the film, Steppenwolf has already conquered thousands of worlds, defeating anyone that tried to oppose him, all in the name of his master. This brings us to the first point. While he is the main villain of this movie, he is not the main villain of the overarching story. He's a type of character known as the Heavy, no, not that one, which TV tropes describe as the antagonist with the biggest screen time and most active role in the plot. Probably the most famous example of this trope is Darth Vader from the original Star Wars trilogy. He plays the main antagonistic role throughout all three movies, but it's Emperor Palpatine the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. Similarly, Steppenwolf may be the main antagonist of this movie, but is actually wearing an unequated power that constantly looms over the larger story, that being Darkseid, the ruler of Apokolips. When done right, this trope can be used to, let's say, hype up the bigger villain by giving them someone to be compared to. If the Heavy is shown to be particularly evil or powerful, but then is also later shown to obey another character, then that can be an indicator for the audience about what can expect from the bigger bad once he takes the spotlight. But Steppenwolf being Darkseid's representative isn't just a narrative connection to advertise the next story, it's a vital component to who he is. Unlike his 2017 counterpart, this Steppenwolf has clearly lost all of enthusiasm about his job as a planned killer. So he acts as this very tired and weary soldier in constant resignation of everything around him. He doesn't see conquering planets as a source of pleasure, but just another step in the way of repaying his debt and get out of his exile. So he has a much sterner and less sadistic demeanor here. Let's look at these two clips to compare their behavior in the two existing versions of the film.
Dad! Victor!
Ah, you were born of her. A creature of chaos.
Not how I see it.
Give it time.
Victor!
Kill them both.
While 2017 Steppenwolf is Saturday morning cartoon levels of cheese, 2021 Steppenwolf is simply tired of his shit. Everything he does in the film is to get to his goal as soon as possible. He consistently remains focused on his duty and plans his action very tactically, like a veteran on the battlefield. I think the best word to describe his approach is pragmatic. He uses every advantage at his disposal, fights only when needed, tries to keep a low profile, retreats as soon as possible, doesn't waste time boasting about his power or insulting others unless it's for psychological warfare.
Tell me, Amazon, why did you abandon your own sisters?
Steppenwolf isn't the type of villain that makes big speeches. Whenever he talks, it's only to make threats, demands or assessments. That said, he isn't like the Terminator or the Winter Soldier, servants with almost zero personality outside of accomplishing a task. Because Steppenwolf's style demeanor adds personality to his character. When simple interrogation proves to be ineffective with his Atlantean guard, Steppenwolf pulls out a spider-like device that forcefully probes the information needed from his mind. He probably was hoping for the guy to just tell him what he wants to know without need for force, almost as if he couldn't be bothered to summon the spider at first. But once that proves to be the most effective method for interrogation, he uses it with all of his following prisoners. When he teleports in front of a large crowd and finds the mother box to be missing, Steppenwolf flexes his spikes with anger and jumps inside the Star Labs, but he leaves everyone in there unarmed. This obviously wasn't out of the goodness of his heart, but because, well, he doesn't care. Hurting those people won't get him any closer to his goal, so why bother? He's only here for the mother box. Like his 2017 counterpart, there's still an element of pride to his behavior, but it's executed with much more dignity here. Steppenwolf is essentially unstoppable for most of the film, and he knows it. Therefore, he expects anyone beneath him to surrender when the occasion is given. Throughout the film, he even takes a few extra seconds to subtly demonstrate his power over others by doing gestures like breaking arrows, crushing helmets, tossing people, catching missiles, but not in a "mwahaha, I'm so strong" kind of way, but more in a "look, you simply cannot win this, look what I can do to you, let's get this over with, okay?" So what adds to his character is the fact that he is powerful and he acts as such. Just as a reminder, the Apokoliptians use planets as debt payments. Ridiculous as that is, it goes to show not only how immense the empire is, but how detached they are from their victims. To them, all the civilization they turn to dust are just numbers, statistics.
Defenders, they have failed 100,000 worlds.
Still. Oh, the Great One, 50,000 more worlds.
I have turned 100,000 worlds to dust looking for anti-life.
This is very fitting, since they are technically alien gods after all, but this information highlights another element of Steppenwolf's character. He simply doesn't care about those beneath him. Forming the Unity will scorch the entire planet, and giving the anti-life equation to Darkseid will be giving him the means to rule over the multiverse. His perspective on life is centered entirely about what he and his kind wants. Anyone else is like ants beneath him, making him a very detached and apathetic kind of evil, rather than a big bully. The final element I want to discuss about Steppenwolf's characterization is how determined he is. Sure, it's easy to be confident when you overpower anyone in your way, but what happens when Steppenwolf meets the one being that can significantly challenge him physically? Well, after Superman destroys his weapon, Steppenwolf's very first instinct is to punch the ground in anger and charge towards his opponent. He tries to punch him multiple times and fails. Whenever he gets knocked down, he gets right back up, and it takes a group effort by WonderWoman, Aquaman and Superman for him to actually stay down. Then it takes a surprise impalement from the back, followed by nothing less than full-on decapitation to fully stop him for good. So 2021 Steppenwolf goes down fighting, while 2017 Steppenwolf was so scared of losing that his own parademon senses fear and ganged up on him to eat him? Yeah, not the most dignified way to go. There are many arguments to be made about what makes for a great character, and in my personal opinion, the key for that is something called depth. Make your characters more than one thing, give them things to do beyond their required narrative purpose. The biggest criticism for Steppenwolf's 2017 iteration was how one-note he was. He existed to be evil, move the plot along, and absolutely nothing else. While still an evil conqueror, we're given a much more fleshed out characterization in the Snyder Cut. Instead of being evil for the fun of it and his exile being mentioned once, this Steppenwolf is defined by wanting to get out of his exile, and he commits evil deeds solely to accomplish that. The great thing about visual storytelling is that you can use elements like colors, shapes and framing to convey character information. Steppenwolf may be a planet-destroying conqueror, but he's also a tired, old veteran that wants to be allowed back to his own world, and his design brilliantly illustrates both sides of him. Firstly, the VFX on 2021 Steppenwolf are nothing short of amazing. How his armor reflects the light of the environment he's in, the scratches on each spike, the pores, scars and wrinkles on his skin, the shiny eyes. It's honestly insane this didn't get an nomination. Each shard on his armor constantly moves and shifts like a living breathing being, depending on Steppenwolf's emotions. When he's calm and outside battle territory, each blade flattens down, showing off his surprisingly lean physique, but whenever he enters battle mode, each spike rises right back up, like an animal trying to be intimidating. His armor even follows the same kind of metallic texture that can be seen in other Apokoliptians, making for a neat piece of world building, since of course the fascist planet would be stylistically centered around the same aesthetic as its leader. From his very first scene, Steppenwolf is established as an imposingly tall creature that towers over most characters, with the camera framing him in ways that further highlight his size. We humans are very wary of sharp and pointing things such as needles and knives, since we associate them with the fear of being cut and sliced. Needless to say, his overall look screams the word sharp, from his horns, the spikes on his armor, to his axe, shark-like teeth, his long claws, all combined together with his size to create a very threatening looking character that no one would mistake for a good guy. But unlike, for example, Doomsday, Steppenwolf isn't just powerful or terms on sheer power alone, as there's a feeling of civilization to his look. His shiny armor specifically invokes the imagery of a knight in chainmail, which is fitting since he's essentially a soldier that fanatically follows the will of his king. His overall design is based on the idea of using familiar concept with connotation we can recognize, but with an element of something's not quite right added to them. Sure, he may have a humanoid body, square jaw, a chin horns that somewhat resemble a beard, but he's also got 7 fingers per hand, arms that reach his knees, a monkey-like nose, hairless skin, and giant horns that are actually part of his head and not just an helmet. He's also very prone to roaring and growling. In fact, just look at the way his armor covers his body compared to the 2017 version. The latter looks clear as day as a dude wearing an armor, with very clear indication where the wear starts and the armor ends. With the former, you can't really tell on first glance, since it looks as if it's part of Steppenwolf's natural appearance. The way his armor doesn't stop his hands as it goes slightly over them in not a clean way, it weirdly enough reminds me of the way a chimpanzee first leaves its hands uncovered. Sure, 2017 Steppenwolf may be more comic accurate, but look how basic it looks. That Roman Greek inspired skirt and black boots could belong to any warmongering villain. Meanwhile, look at the leg era on 2021 Steppenwolf. Instead of having boots, his armor stops at the almost dinosaur-looking double pads, which look quite unnatural since we normally expect animals to support themselves on more than that. And there's also like fish-like fins on the back of his legs, which all contributes to create a very unique, unsettling and unnatural looking design that emphasizes his alien nature. Additionally, let's talk about colors. Grey is very often negatively associated with feelings of emotional detachment and emptiness, or with mechanical stuff such as robots and machines. Colors can be a great indicator of a character's personality, and Steppenwolf is no exception. The cold grey he wears perfectly goes along with his apathetic, uncaring and duty-driven personality. Dull and dark colors work on villains because they're not colors we generally associate with warm, happy stuff. We associate these colors with the unknown in the dark, the mechanical coldness of grey, the uncanny purity of white. There's a reason why heroes are usually the ones wearing bright primary colors, because they're exciting, they attract your attention, they convey positive emotions. What makes Steppenwolf's overall design great is the fact that it conveys everything you need to know about who he is by first glance alone. Unlike most comic book films, Zack Snyder's Justice League is rated R, which allows for vastly more violence than would be normally allowed. Therefore, whenever Steppenwolf eats someone with his axe, the person isn't just launched somewhere else, they're sliced to pieces. This adds a sense of dread as we're given a concrete idea of what Steppenwolf can do, because we know he isn't bound by any constraints either in the context of the film or the film's age rating. However, the film's visual language doesn't just serve to convey Steppenwolf's power, but his surprising vulnerability as well. During his holographic conversations with Darkseid's devious right-hand man, the Zod, Steppenwolf is shown for the first time in the film to look up to the person he's talking to, rather than down, since the Zod's hologram is bigger than him, making Steppenwolf look smaller in comparison. The Zod is also on a higher rank than Steppenwolf, something that he gleefully reminds the latter while listing his past failures, making him feel small on an emotional level. Then Steppenwolf gets even smaller when he displays genuine humility as he kneels down and begs the Zack to talk to Darkseid, going as far as to use a much softer tone of voice and making a plea instead of a demand, but he's denied a chance anyway. Then, when he is finally presented to Darkseid himself, Steppenwolf backs down in terror as his armor shifts down from his head, revealing his true form. A frail, weak-looking creature with lots of scars and wrinkles that show how old he is and how much time he spent in battle, his arms even looking a tad damaged and consumed. The way his back protrudes also kinda makes him look malnourished, and kinda reminds me of the lanky figure of Scar from The Lion King. The actor Syrian Hines describes Steppenwolf as old and tired, and that was plenty evident here, from both his looks and Syrian's awesome performance in both the vocal and expressive range. On that topic, it is often said that the eyes are the windows of the soul, and that's very true. Our eyes are second only to our mouths when it comes to displaying emotion, and that's for the exact reason the lack of eyes gives off a very inhuman feel. Just look at the animalistic Xenomorph or the Black Void in Michael Myers' mask. The same way the absence of eyes can signal human detachment, their presence can help us connect and relate. And while it became somewhat of a meme, Steppenwolf in this film has some very big, oddly endearing shiny eyes that emote and express a lot throughout the film. This creates a very sympathetic vibe that almost makes the viewer feel bad for Steppenwolf's situation. In contrast, his master Darkseid is portrayed to have either creepy dark sclera or bright unrelenting eyes emerging from his eyes, which respectfully portray his pure evil nature first and godly power second. The parademons have headgear that resemble German helmets fused into their heads, giving them these glowing goggle-like eyes with no emotion behind them, so our attention goes directly to the dry skin and savage mouth full of jagged teeth. Steppenwolf himself also gets a set of bright light eyes in the film's climax, when he gets a power boost from the mother boxes. And that removes the element of emotion the character previously had in order to convey his sheer power. But once he's defeated, his eyes turn normal again, because at this point in the film, his head is most vulnerable. Most of his armor is ruined, his weapon is shattered, his army has been destroyed, his plan was stopped, he has lost. He roars in defiance, trying to attack once more, but he gets unceremoniously stabbed and decapitated shortly after, marking the end of the story of mighty Steppenwolf. Well, at least he managed to return home. Despite its hefty runtime, ZackSnyder JusticeLeague has a much more straightforward story compared to his two predecessors. This is not meant to be a criticism, but an observation about the film's structure. Whereas the first two SnyderVerse entries had to deal with a very self-contained number of protagonists, allowing for a much more character drama approach, ZackSnyder JusticeLeague has to juggle no less than 6 main characters and the main villain. Therefore, the story follows a much more action-driven and simple structure, since the time is to be divided into much more sections between one character and the next. Regardless, ZackSnyder JusticeLeague still manages to be a thematically sound story, epic in scope and scale, but still heartfelt on a personal and intimate level. Conceptually speaking, Steppenwolf plays the same role in both versions of the film, the big bad that wants to collect some dangerous items with the help of his minions. He isn't there to challenge our protagonist mentally or morally, just physically. He's a force of nature that brings the heroes together, a threat that relies on brute force and the number of his troops. And that's okay, not every villain needs to be the next Judge Frollo in terms of complexity, but if you make your villain too bare bones and simple, then he stops being a character that works as an obstacle and just becomes an obstacle, period. The two Steppenwolf and the cats they reside in show that you can do two things with a simple premise. You either make the most shallow use of it possible, or you allow it to flesh out and flourish into something remarkable, memorable, and great. I'm Uncle Krypton, and I hope I made your day slightly better.